Hello and welcome to The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine that seeks to shed light on that unanswerable question. Just what is it about golf that gets so deep under people's skin? My name's Rod Murray and in a few moments we'll be chatting with Wade Ormsby. But before we meet the two-time Hong Kong Open winner, I have some quick news to share with you all. For the past year and a bit, it's been my enormous privilege as host of this show to chat at length with some of the game's most interesting people. From administrators and players to writers and entrepreneurs, it's been one of my favourite projects to be a part of. But as I hinted at in closing in our last episode, there are some changes afoot here at The Thing About Golf, and to be honest, I'm even more excited about what we're going to be doing moving forward, as they say. There was air quotes there for those who couldn't tell. If you're a reader of Golf Australia magazine, and if you're not, you should be, or even if you're just a keen follower of the game, you'll be familiar with the name John Huggan. Huggy is one of the very best writers in the business, and his monthly musings in the magazine have earned him several awards. In fact, he's so good, we even had him on this very show as a guest back on episode 9. But in this new digital age, even old dogs have to learn new tricks, and I'm extremely pleased to say that after much cajoling with various treats, Huggy has learned how to use a microphone, and drumroll please, will be joining us as a host from episode 32. Huggy, say hello to the people, your people.
Hello to the people.
Fantastic to have you along, mate. Lovely to be having a chat. This is all pretty exciting stuff. We'll share the hosting duties, you and I, on a rotating basis, so people will get one of us each month in their ears. Every 2 weeks the show comes out, so that's going to be some exciting stuff, and I think it's going to add something really good to the show. As the person doing all of the organising and all of the interviews, there can be a bit of sameness, so it's going to be fantastic to have somebody help out, and you would be the best person for the job. You've been a guest on countless podcasts, Huggy, and I've shared commentary with you on radio, the Australian Open radio out here. I'm going to guess, though, that you never really thought in your wildest dreams when you started that you'd end up doing something like this, sitting and doing lengthy interviews with subjects.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. One of my favourite things to do in print is to sit down and do a long Q&A with, usually a top player. And that's the time when you can really get under their skin a little bit. I mean, usually you're doing 5-10 minutes, but if you get people to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour, say, you really get to know them so much better, and you can move around subject-wise. I mean, it's not just the usual generic, what did you hit to the 14th green stuff. It's actually much more in depth than that. So I'm looking forward to this new experience, if you like.
Now, Huggy, it's a whole new digital world for us, so you're going to have to learn some new sayings. And the first one is in the can. Your first interview is in the can. One of the best sports writers in the business, Tom Callahan, a mentor of yours and a friend. I've had a listen. It's a terrific chat. What was that like, though, for you to sit down with somebody you have sort of so much respect for? It's a different sort of an experience, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm be interested to listen to it back. I haven't done that yet. Unique experience for me to talk to somebody I know so well and I'm so close to. I mean, he and I talk on the phone 2 or 3 times a week. So it felt weird actually to talk to him, in an interview setting. But with Tom, when people listen to it, I think they'll gather that Tom likes to talk, and he tells great stories. So there's not a lot of me, I think, in this interview. There's just a lot of listening on my end.
The perfect introduction. Well, of course, he is one of the very best storytellers, and he has a whole bunch of great stories to tell, isn't it? Hasn't he? So it's the perfect combination. Although, Huggy, as I did when I interviewed you, completely missed Sevy and had to turn the tape back on so that we could capture all that. You missed one of Tom's great stories as well. So I want you to share that now before we wrap this up and get on with Wade Ormsby.
Well, I think I missed more than one. I mean, there's so many with Tom, but he's known and talked to just about every great sportsman, not just golfers of the last sort of half century. But one of my favourites was one that is pretty topical at the moment, and as I say, I do regret that I didn't remember. But this was back to a time years ago, long before Donald Trump was president of the United States. He turned up at a boxing match where Tom was sitting ringside, and the pair of them were introduced after the boxing was finished, and Trump goes, well, Tom, you're a great writer, and would you have any interest in writing my next book? To which Tom replied, I wouldn't have any interest in reading your next book. So, and I think the relationship went downhill from there.
There you go. I think we know which way Tom might have voted in the recent elections there. Fantastic stuff. Well, of course, Huggy, Tom's just the beginning. I know that you've got a contact book that's bulging with famous names, and a lot of them will probably appear here in the coming months. But I also know, and this is one of the things that we wanted to do with Thing About Golf, there are many, many people that a lot of fans will either never have heard of because they were from a previous generation, or that just have a remarkable golf story to tell, and it never gets told because they're not famous. And I know that you know plenty of them as well, and I'm hoping that we'll hear some of those from you too.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we don't just do top golfers. I mean, you've done a great job of that already with some of the people that I'd never heard of them, but they were great stories, and that's really what we hope to do on this, I think.
Yeah, the idea with this one is to sort of build trust with the audience, that when they see the new episode, even if they've never heard the name, they trust our judgment there's a good story to tell, and they trust our ability to help the guest tell it well. That's what we're trying to do here, so we'll do our very best. And Huggy, you will undoubtedly contribute an awful lot to that. I'm really looking forward to editing your stuff each month. Huggy won't be doing the intros and the outros. He just does the proper work, and I'll do the trimmings for each of his episodes. Who knows? A few more treats.
I hasten to add, you're doing them because you're the only one of the two of us who can do this. Right?
I'll get some more treats, Huggy. Maybe we can teach you. You've done remarkably well with the microphone and the recording process, so well done. Can I just say on behalf of the listeners and from me personally, Huggy, I really am pleased that you've agreed to be part of the show. Really looking forward to seeing where we can take it, mate. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much.
Yes, absolutely fantastic to have Huggy on board, and I do hope that you're as excited about that prospect as I am. However, I can tell you that if there's one thing Huggy hates, it's self-indulgence, and we've already had far too much of it on this episode. So let's move on to what is important for episode 31, and that is the life and career of Wade Ormsby. Twice a Hong Kong Open winner, Ormsby is one of those golfers who's flown mostly under the radar for most of his career. It'd be fair to say he was a bit of a late bloomer in terms of his golf, but as you'll hear in this conversation, he has no regrets about learning his craft on the job. Hailing from Adelaide, where his father Peter, also a professional, owns one of the most successful off-course retail shops in the country, we caught up with Wade in his hometown, where he was into day 8 of a 14-day quarantine after returning from the UK. From his multiple successful trips to Q School, to a lifelong friendship with Adam Scott, to the business realities of playing golf for a living, Ormsby is open, honest and reflective in this interview, which I do hope that you enjoy. Well, Wade Ormsby, we appreciate you taking some time. Although you've got plenty on your hands, you're in quarantine. This is your first go at it. We know that golfers being regular international travellers is probably going to be a part of life for a while, but you just told me you're not too keen on it, so you're going to try and not do too much of it.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously with the pandemic, we're faced with this quarantine aspect of it. So we've had to kind of make our tournament schedules in massive blocks, because that's the only way you can do it, because you just got to try and avoid this quarantine as much as you can. But anyway, I've got through my first stint of it and halfway through my quarantine back here in Oz and ready for the Aussie summer.
Yeah, as we just discussed, you got a nice view from your hotel room there in Adelaide, but it's the same view all day, every day. It never changes. A gilded cage is still a cage, isn't it? So even though you're in a nice room, it's not like being on holidays. So I do feel for you, and we appreciate you taking the time under the circumstances. The podcast is called The Thing About Golf, Wade, so that's our jumping off point. What's the thing about golf for Wade Ormsby?
That's an interesting one. I feel like I get put on the spot a bit for that, but I think as an individual sport, it's you kind of versus a golf course with your clubs. I love that there's no judges or anyone controlling your destiny. It's all up to you, and that's the thing I love about it. I could never play a sport where someone's controlling me or selectors or whatever else, and especially at a professional level, but even back at an amateur level, it's great that you can just grab your clubs and go out there and play the course at any time of day and feel like you're getting something out of it, and you've got that kind of level of competition against the golf course. So I've always loved that. Obviously, probably sounds like I'm a competitive person, and I guess I am. I think sport does that to you, and I've always loved golf for that aspect of it.
It's a unique type of competition, golf, though, isn't it? In particular, I suppose for us recreational golfers especially. I'll tee up in the Wednesday comp, and if my mate's playing well, I'm genuinely happy for him, and I want to see him go on with it and do well. But equally at the same time, if he starts hitting him in the water and racking up 7s and 8s, I think that's hilarious. The competition's not direct, is it? It's this weird camaraderie that we've all got, even though we're all playing against each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably the same out there on tour. You've got you enjoy. Well, the competition's always competition, and it doesn't matter what level it is, whether it's club or on tour. You're always pushing, and like I said, it's not always a big tournament like we're playing in or whatever. It can be club golf or whatever. It's always nice getting the clubs out of the boot of the car and going trying each day to put a round together, and you don't know what you're going to get. Some days you warm up bad and it feels good. Other days you warm up great and it turns out terribly on the golf course, and that's just a wonderful game of golf. There's so many things that come into it, and it's just a massive battle of the head. So that's all part of it.
From the outside, Wade, it would be easy for us to assume that golf was always going to be in your future. Your dad is one of Australia's best-known, club pros we call him here, but really he's a fantastic golf businessman, inventor of the Swing Guide, owner of one of the biggest retail golf shops in Australia there in Adelaide. I'm not sure whether that's sort of still going. Have we got that right? Was golf always going to be in your future, or was there a time when you kind of rejected it?
No, absolutely. It's been in the family the whole way through and still is. I think it probably goes back to my grandmother. Mary Ormsby. She was a lawn bowler and won a huge amount of titles and represented Australia. I think for a record amount of time. So no, Gran was. I guess she's got the competitor in her with the individual sport. I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I kind of come from there. And then my dad and Uncle Dave, they both got into golf, both their apprenticeship around a similar time down at Glenelg Golf Club. So that was the kind of history of it. And then for myself, it was more my brother, Jordan. Jordan is only 16 months older than me, but he was a much better player than me, and he was always destined for the professional game a lot more than me. And I was always into cricket and footy, and mainly cricket. And then I started to want to try to not catch my brother, but I wanted to do what my brother was doing. And I was never as good as Jordan, so I had to work, and he was always a lot more talented than me. So I guess that work ethic got driven into me quite early by myself more than anything, just because that's what I had to do to try and keep up with my brother. So then I got to around that 14, 15-year age time kind of zone, and I just really put my head down. A couple of guys from Adelaide had gone to college in the States, and I didn't hate school, but I kind of knew I was going to finish school over here, and that would have led to having the college door open for me. So just kind of the natural progression from there, from just working away at my game and kind of keeping my options open. But I guess it was my brother more than anything, was that carrot in front of me that made me drive to be better. And then the byproduct of that was just being a decent player, and then the lure of professional golfers in front of me. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. A gift that continues to give today. I never even knew you had a brother. What became of Jordan?
Jordan was one of these guys that was good at everything he touched. So he was great at cricket, good footy, and whatever else. And sometimes it's those guys that don't go on with it because maybe, I'm not sure, we've had a chat about it since, it's because maybe you don't have to work as hard, and I'm not sure. I'm not saying he's lazy by any means, but he was just always good enough to be good, So you didn't have to work that much harder. But he played the Aussie junior team with Adam Scott, and I think Ogilvy was in that team, and a couple of other guys. I can't remember who was in that six-man team. So he had a really good junior career, but he just didn't really like the travel, and I think that started to hit home pretty hard early on. So I think he just got sidetracked away from the game around the 18, 19, 20-year-old bracket. And now he's gone on to have a successful business. He he's in the golf cart business here in South Australia, sales, service and hire business. And also he does Jacobson turf equipment, which is obviously like greenkeeping equipment, mowers and sporting fields and all that. So he runs a decent-sized business here in Adelaide and does well. So I guess he's still in the sport in some way or another. But, it's kind of funny how life turns out, and he'd never think he'd be kind of selling golf carts and mowers. But, no, he's doing well, so I'm really happy for him.
And he never has to quarantine. It begs the question, because right. he just stays in Adelaide and makes his living, and everything's fine. Thank you very much. It does beg the question, though, and it's one, I guess, probably for all golfers, about when you get to a certain level, what's the most important. It sounds like really the only thing lacking there for Jordan is drive. When you get that sort of supernatural talent, plus a drive, which I think it really takes to get to the level that you've got in golf, you get Tiger Woods, don't you? And Jordan Spieth. That's the sort of player that you get. Without that, I wonder whether you can get there. Have you come across anybody who's just naturally good enough that without being driven can have a career in professional golf?
I think this has been spoken about quite a bit in the last 20 years, but no, you definitely see guys come through which have a natural gift to hold the golf club and move well and whatever else, but you still need that thing between your ears every day when you wake up. You want to be good and you want to get better at this and you want to achieve things. And like that guy that just won in Europe, Callum Sheequin, he's a different makeup of a good player, if that makes sense in a way. Like ever since he's come out, he's had an amazing talent, and he should have won 3 or 4 times already, and now he's won. And let's see, it can go both ways for these guys. He should kick on and be a Ryder Cup team player if he gets everything right, and some things it can be the pinnacle of their career. They can just push till they win their first tournament and they just plateau out. So it's so difficult because it's not just that natural talent. There's another one, Thomas Peters is a huge talent, but these are the guys in that top 3% of talent as I see it. Everyone sees talent differently, but I think the drive and the want to succeed and want to get that 100% out of yourself, for me, that's the way I've tried to operate, and I put a lot of emphasis on that because that's the only way I know, to be honest. If I don't push myself hard, I'm not good. So I need to push myself harder, otherwise I don't have a job. So it's difficult for me to see it from other people's perspective. But you're right. You get talent, you get drive, you get work ethic, you get a good brain working between your ears on the golf course, and you get Tiger Woods, and that's as simple as it is, I think.
And it's also that it's that rare to get all of that together. That's what that tells us. Yeah. Thomas Peters, not only one of the most naturally gifted and beautiful players to watch play the game, one of the great club snappers. Breaks clubs around his neck, which takes both strength, courage, and form. So he's a joy to watch.
He can pop clubs, a big fella, but he is a great guy. He's been a mate ever since he came on tour. I actually played with him when I went back to Q School. I can't remember my last time going back there, but I played with him in the last round there. An Australian guy was caddying for him, Roger. And I remember my current caddy, he was on my bag then because we've been together a long time, and I was looking at Thomas hit some shots and go, this guy is so good. We had all these bets on tour kind of thing internally saying he's going to be top 50 in the world within 5 years or whatever, but he was that good, and he is that good. He just needs to, it just depends how high he wants to go in the game, but he is good.
It's funny. So I follow him at the World Cup down here at Kingston Heath when he played with Coles. It's just phenomenal to watch. Just a magnificent player, as you say, which is interesting. And it's a bit of a by the way, but John Huggan tells a great story about caddying for Mike Clayton many years ago at a Heineken Classic down here. And they were paired with a very young Nicholas Colsaerts. And you would know Nicholas. Hits the ball magnificently, incredible talent himself. Fantastic player. And they walked off the course and Huggy said to Clates, he's a magnificent hitter of the ball, that Colsaerts, isn't it? If he ever learns how to play golf, he'll be quite dangerous. From outside golf, it doesn't make any sense, but they're almost two different skills, aren't they? The ability to physically hit the ball and then the ability to actually play golf.
Absolutely. I've never been a good ball hitter, if that makes sense. I look at kids and amateurs and everything else and say, oh, funny I could hit it like that, but then people watch me hit it and they think that I hit it perfect. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Nico's another amazing talent, but he's just got a different type of persona about him, Nico. I don't want to sit here and talk about all the different players, but Nico's, he's been out on tour a long time and he's a great player, massively gifted again, and almost won the Italian Open last week, finished second and lost by a shot. So, no, all these guys have had great careers. It's so kind of fickle, this game out on tour, to what determines getting the most out of yourself and not getting the most out of yourself, and everyone having their opinion on how your career should go. But I think most of us, you always put all aspects of your game on the table to try and work out the best way to go all the time, and consistently doing that to try to maximize your performance. And you don't always get those decisions right. You get them right for you at the time, but everyone's got their opinion on which way you should have gone. He should have had a coach early in his career, he shouldn't have, or all this kind of stuff. And we're like any other business, you kind of, you keep faced with all these decisions. Should you change coach? Should you change caddy? Should you have a mental coach? Should you not? Should you play this schedule, that schedule? And all these little crossroads and forks, determine your career. And there's no perfect playbook for everyone. You got to work it out as you go along. And that's part of life, it's part of business, and it's no different in professional sport.
Yeah, golf very much so, isn't it? What works for you won't work for Adam Scott. What works for Adam Scott won't work for Laura Davies. What works for Laura Davies won't work for Kari Webb. There really is no textbook, is there? And trying to copy somebody else or find that textbook, that can be a rabbit hole that can cost years of a professional career.
Yeah, exactly right. We're faced with golf tuition at all different levels, whether it's looking at TrackMan numbers getting slammed up on Instagram every day, or 5-minute videos from renowned golf coaches, or you coach down your local club, or your mate telling you what to do. They're all different ways information is presented to us these days, and you got to kind of siphon through it or to work out what's relevant for you. Everyone's got their pie and what makes them good, and what aspects of the game you need to work on to get better. And I think if you're really honest with yourself and you put it on the table, you can kind of work out what's right for you. You're right, and it's different for everyone. And we're right in the middle of this phase where everyone's smashing it, and Bryson's kind of done that to us, and it's probably been around for 25 years, since 96 when Tiger came out, and he was hitting it a mile back then, so relative to the field. So it's nothing new. We just got to you just got to absorb the information the correct way and get your most out of it, and go from there.
When do you play your best golf, Wade? And what I mean by that, is it a physical thing or is it a mental, emotional thing? I would imagine the physical doesn't change enormously once you get you. I'm sure it changes, and there are days when you hit it better than others. But is that the final? Yeah. Does that have the final say on how well you play, or are there other things? Is it happiness and calmness, and are there other factors?
Yeah, I think there's kind of, you can probably divide it into 3 little areas. I think you can put it into the where you're happy, expectations, everything else in your life, but your expectations get rolled into that kind of the mental part of it. Then you've got your long game and your short game, or so, but you're scrambling and you're putting, and then your ball striking. It's so easy to focus on just how the club feels, or how the ball feels coming off the club, which is your ball striking aspect. And any one week on tour, you're going to get 60% of the guys playing that are going to hit it good enough to win a golf tournament. So then it gets down to the other 2 elements I said, which is kind of your mental and your well-being and all that, and life in general. So again, you're going to get probably a third of the guys out of that 60% I just said hitting it good that are in a really good place there and thinking well and got their expectations in check and everything else. So now you're down to probably 20 or 30 guys, and then whoever putts and scrambles good is going to win the golf tournament or be there on Sunday. So I saw an interesting stat pop up on Instagram again. A renowned putting coach, he circled the last 9 tournaments on tour, PGA Tour I think it was only, with the shots gained, and it was all putting. Even Bryson, the guys that the number one area of their game that excelled the week that they won was their putting. So I would agree with that. There's no way you can out-ball strike a field, but you can definitely out-putt a field. So I think that's a huge part of winning, of having good weeks, week in, week out on tour. Well, I think you need to have your game in all 3 of those areas in a nice position. So, but yeah, winning, you definitely got to hold putts. You can't get away with missing 5 and 6 and 7 footers. You got to make all of them, pretty much all of them, all week to beat the guys out there these days.
You can cover a lot of not great ball striking with good putting, but you can't cover poor putting with good ball striking, can you? It just doesn't work that other way around.
You can't get in the hole from inside 4 feet. Doesn't matter how good you hit it, and then the game just becomes so frustrating. I think it's more frustrating hitting it good and putting bad than it is hitting it bad and putting good. You kind of always got that fight in you if you're holding putts and scrambling well. You can always stay alive. If you're not holding putts, you're gone.
Yeah, indeed, it's enough to drive you mad, isn't it? You mentioned Bryson and this sort of everything old is new again. Snead before Woods, Daly before Woods, Nicholas in his time, all were super long relative to the field. What there does seem to have been in the last 20 years is a real shift towards this scientific breakdown of the game. And you would see this on Twitter and Instagram, this notion of the decade system that Scott Fawcett promotes, where we take all of the artistic sort of thinking out of the game, which is the way I always see the game, why I think it's such a beautiful game, and we just break it down to almost accounting. Where do you sort of stand in that? As a professional, you want to compete. If that's true, then that's what you need to do to compete, then you have to take that way. Or the game attracts artists and engineers in almost equal numbers, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's definitely going towards the engineer side of it. That's sport. That's 2020, and you can try to unlearn it or whatever you want to do or forget about it, but you can't. It's information. Information's key, like I said. So you look at any sport that the listeners like outside of golf. You look at AFL football, everyone will say, oh, it's better back in the 70s, it's better back in the 80s, and maybe aspects of it was, but that's not what we're faced with now. We've got computers, we've got sensors, we've got video replay, we've got everything now, and to be good, you've got to use it. And I always use the analogy with motorsport because I love motorsport. It's like going back in the 70s. Everyone loves that era, but now you've got hundreds of sensors over the race cars, and you've got 100 engineers sitting back in London while guys are racing in Italy, analysing what's going on to get the best outcome for the day. And that's what we deal with. Well, that's what we're dealt with, and you got to embrace that because that's where we are. We aren't in 1970. So we've got TrackMan, we've got stats, we've got video, we've got great coaches, we've got amazing equipment. So why not use it to be good? And it's just natural progression in sport. It's natural progression in life. So guys are just decoding the game in a different way, and whether you like it or not, that's the way it's going. So we just got to keep pushing.
Do you like it? Does it make the game less interesting in some ways?
That's a very good question. I like it because you've got more, not control, it's not the right word, but you've got everything more in front of you. So if you can be more diligent of combing through all the information, you can get somewhere with it. So I kind of don't mind that aspect of it. I think like any golfer, you love to play with your natural flair, whatever that is, and move the ball around and scramble and spin the ball and all that. I like that kind of golf. And, I'd say probably no. I'd probably go a little bit back towards the old way. But I think a lot of that comes back to the golf course setup. If you set the golf courses up properly, which you can never always control because you've got weather component of it, but if you get firm, bouncy golf course, you don't even need that much rough, You're just enough rough that you're going to get unpredictable flyer, scrappy lies and all that, which makes it more difficult to control the spin on the ball, which in turn makes it more difficult to control the distance and the direction of your ball. If you can get that component of it right, I think it lends itself back more to that creative style of play, like we saw at the President's Cup. The way Royal Melbourne was set up was mega, and I think everyone likes that type of golf. It's just that we don't have the venues week in, week out, and the huge amount of preparation to go into that to pump out those style of golf courses week in, week out, because we are pushed and pulled around the world for a number of different reasons to play on venues, new venues, old venues, for a number of different reasons, and a lot of them are commercial.
There's, of course, you're right, I've not yet met a golfer, professional, amateur, or anyone with an interest in the game who didn't think that the President's Cup last year was the absolute pinnacle of golf. And I think there was probably a couple of factors. One, it's match play, which is always entertaining. It was Tiger at his best on a golf course that allowed him to show what golf can be when you get the great instrument and the great musician together and playing. But I wonder whether there's and you might have some thoughts on this. I don't want to get you in any trouble, but it seems that those who run professional golf have a different view about the product they're trying to sell. Professional golf is just entertainment, of course, but there seems to be a view, particularly in America, that the ball that goes a long way in the air and stops where it lands and leads to lots of birdies is what will attract the biggest crowds. Am I right in that? Do you think that that's true?
I think they are 100% focused on that's what they want. It's just what gets pumped out from what gets presented to them, like a venue and all that kind of stuff and weather conditions. And I don't know, I guess you want green on TV, that makes sense. But there's so many aspects that go into choosing a venue and sponsors being happy where they're putting on the show and all that, because there are a number of different things that go into putting golf tournaments on. We are in the entertainment industry first and foremost, and golf is secondary to that, which I think if we did it purely the other way around and put golf as a sport and golf as a game, how would we present it? You'd put it around all your old bouncy courses and we all walk inside the ropes and like the old days and like the Shell's A Wonderful World of Golf, that kind of look. And I think there's a lot of people that would love it, but then a lot of people love that Phoenix Open type deal where you can have beers on grandstand line fairways and watch guys just stuff it in there all day. So it's entertainment. So I can see both sides of it, but I wouldn't say that they've got it wrong. The people running our sport are still golf enthusiasts and love the game and whatever else. So I think money is a massive driver, but we have to be viable as businesses, as tours and everything else. So you still got to look at every component of it. You just can't have 35 tournaments around golf courses like Walton Heath or Royal Melbourne every year. It wouldn't tick everyone's boxes as viewers and everyone else. But kind of going back to the point you mentioned earlier in that question, it's like the Bryson type thing and all that. But it gets clicks. It's what people are kind of clicking on Instagram and what everyone wants to talk about, and all these numbers are blown up because they're at altitude or downwind or it's a one-hit screamer or whatever it is. That's just, you don't get people talking about how many foot someone hold for the day or how many putts someone hold coming down the stretch. It's just not what we're drawn to as people in the game. Everyone likes a big hit. Everyone likes birdies. It's just the way it is.
You're sitting at the wrong table in the club. Come and sit with us, mate, when you finish. You'll get all of that stuff about who hold them at Greenwich. There's plenty of golf nerds in the world, as you well know. I wonder that the question then becomes, Wade, is the current trajectory of the game at the professional level particularly sustainable? Distance has become, to some of us, there's a lot of us think that distance has become too important, that it's become such a focus, and we know that the equipment allows and has allowed that to happen and continues to allow that to happen. So I wonder whether it's sustainable. It's in the interests of all of us to think about this as professional administrators, amateur bodies, and club golfers. Is it sustainable in a world of finite resources where golf courses can't continue to grow their footprint because forces from outside of golf will stop that? Is it, do we allow the game to become pitch and putt, or will the market sort it out? If that happens and people turn away from the game, will we change the game so that it goes back to something that we're talking about that we think is more entertaining? I wonder about the long term. The here and now is fairly straightforward, but the long-term sustainability.
I think there's two parts to that come straight to mind. I think the first part is, yes, we have got great golf courses on certain sized pieces of land, and we can't keep on pushing tees back and making these courses kind of fit the length that we're hitting it today. I sit there and hit tee shots at Royal Adelaide. I'm going, oh, this is a long hole, has been a long hole ever since I've grown up, and I know how far guys are past me on two of the long guys, and I stand down there after I crank a drive and I'm like, guys are 40, 50 yards past this, they're kind of flicking a shot into these all-time brute holes, I've played growing up. So, yeah, it is that one aspect of it. But I guess it's so quick to point the finger at the golf ball or the equipment, but it's everything, you can't, it gets back to that engineered type analysis point we spoke about before, and it's so many things, guys are lifting more relevant for sport now. People got so many great trainers out there. Our coaches are not better than they've ever been. That's the wrong way to put it, but they've got a lot more answers and a lot more information than they've ever had. You've got TrackMan, which is allowing us to optimize our equipment and our actions and the way we attack the ball. We've got all those answers in that little machine. You can try different things and you can speak to other guys at night. Hang on, if you hit up on it more, you tee it there. Are you getting more out of it? Are you launching it there? And everyone talks about it. So you're forever putting these things out there, and you're coming up with your perfect little combination, so you've got coaching's improved, TrackMan and other devices which are allowing us to optimize our combinations, golf swings, bodies, speeds, equipment. You've got, obviously, equipment hasn't been, the driver's been capped for a few years there, and the speed that the ball can come off the face. So they're obviously just making them look pretty to look at, and maybe distributing the weight in such a way that's making the sweet spot bigger and more stable. So it's not like they're technically coming off faster. They can't, but you're going to get a larger area and a more stable area to hit it. So the drivers are definitely getting better. There's no question. Everyone that comes out is better. And then you've got the golf ball, and the golf ball's getting a lot of the blame because it's right at the end of all those things that I've just said that are combining to the ball going further.
Ultimately, you're right about all that, and I think all sensible people accept that, yes, the information from coaches is better, the ability to tailor the body for the golf swing to move more efficiently is better, the equipment's certainly a part of it, there may be some agronomy things that are a part of it also, but if at the end of it all, is the general trajectory the right one? Because if it's not, to come back to the ball, then surely the ball is the simplest way to control it. It's the one ubiquitous piece of equipment. Everybody has to use a ball.
Yeah, you still get the same. Yeah, and I didn't answer part of your first question, but yeah, I guess the ball is an easy way to roll it back. And and what I was going to say in the first part is, I don't think the amateurs are enjoying the game any less now because of where equipment, launch monitors, and body and coaches have sent us. It's a difficult game to play. So any help that we can give to golfers to play the game in a better way, I think is good. I think the only question's got to be at a professional level, and do we want to alter that at a professional level? Because I think the amateur level can keep on going as far and as hard as you can possibly push it because, it's tough out there, and you want guys to enjoy the game as much as possible. But professional level, things are probably going to happen in the future. I don't know whether they are. I haven't heard anything, but I'm sure they're working away at different ways to do it. But the same guys are going to be good. Bryson, whether they bring him back 40, 50 yards, he'll work it out, and we'll still work out a way to crank it out there. I've hit wooden drivers with Pro V1s, and if you tee it up and hit up on it, they still go. And I've done it the other way around. You quickly find out whether hitting down or hitting up on a certain ball will make it go. To what level is, I guess, you kind of are restricted with different components, whatever you're testing. But guys work it out pretty quick. Which is
always the argument about ruining the game if you roll it back. I tend to agree. Good players figure it out. It doesn't matter what you give them. It doesn't take them long to figure out what works with. Like I said, I'd give you a set of left-handed clubs. You'd beat me inside of 2 days because you'd figure it out. That's the truth of it. Yeah. Back to something you said earlier. You mentioned playing Royal Adelaide. So you've played there your whole life, I imagine, your whole golfing life.
Yeah,
so,
Grange Golf Club and Royal Adelaide in the last 20 years. But yeah, those two I've grown up on. Yeah.
So those brute holes where you stand on the tee and you can remember as a kid that if you thwapped your 2 best woods, you'd still be pitching there. And now you hit a driver and maybe a 6-iron or a 7-iron, and you think about the long guys on tour who are 40 yards ahead of you flicking a lob wedge or a sand wedge in there. In a broader sense, does the ability to hit at 40 yards past where you are now, does that identify the best all-around golfer? Is it more impressive for Greg Norman to cut a 6-iron into that long green and hit it to 8 feet, hole a putt with the old equipment, or Thomas Peters to flick a lob wedge in? It's probably not there's probably not a definitive answer to that. But do you see the point of what I'm asking?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you forget that Norman was the longest or one of the longest in his time, and where Norman's cutting a 6-iron in, other guys are cutting in 3-woods and 4-woods. So, it is where we're at. You can go to every other sport and go, well, that type of footballer was better in that era because he played it all down on the ground and did that, or up in the air, or however football is. And Formula One, it was all the different manufacturers, and now there's only one engine and chassis combination to have, and if you've got that, you're good. And so you can't always just turn back to what we think was good, because everyone always thinks the era before or two before them is better than where we are now. But it is where it is, and I guess it's in the hands of the professional administrators and the two bodies that govern our games, well, two plus a couple of others that are going to pave the road going forward. But I think the game's is good. They got to. I think course setup is a little bit of what a lot of us talk on tour. You get to places and they're soft and there's not enough penalty out there, and it doesn't play kind of fiddly enough. I don't know. I like that type of golf a lot more, but there's a lot of guys that do like it. Even the power guys still like that style of play. So, but you can set a golf course up perfect a week out, and all of a sudden it gets
it rains for 3 days, and that's the end of that, isn't it?
Rain, and you're back to where you started.
Yep. And guys,
where you started throwing darts. So you haven't always got control of these things. So, but yeah, I'm sure there's things that they can try, and the way they're going to mould the game going forward. Yeah, I don't throw my head into it too much. I just deal with what's chucked in front of me, and I'll keep on altering my little equation to try to get the most out of myself and try and win golf tournaments.
You've got a day job to figure out, haven't you? So let's go back to talking a bit about that. As one of the things I've always known about you, Wade, is that you went to Q school about 1 million times, but unlike most blokes who go to Q school 1 million times, you got through 990,000. What do you remember about, I think you did 6 trips to Q school maybe, and I reckon you got through on 5 of them. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
I think it's about right. I think I've got my own locker there in Q
school. What's that about? Do we make every week Q school and Wade Ormsby will be the most successful golfer on the planet?
I always play my best when I got my back against the wall. I think that's probably one thing to take of it. Well, it's funny. When I come out of amateur golf, I guess I was never that good and in that top bracket, so I had to do a lot of my learning, I kind of guess, out on tour. So I got my card on my first attempt in Europe. I had a great little stint there of playing where I think I won first stage and finished third, I reckon, at stage 2 of European Q School, and finished second at finals. So what my point is, I got on tour in a rush in my own mind, and all of a sudden I'm there in the desert playing in the Dubai Desert Classic against guys I'd been watching on TV. So I had to do my learning out on tour. So it's difficult out there, and I managed to scrape through and keep my card the first year, and the second year I had a good year, and then I went through a turbulent time for probably that 6 or 8 year period after that, where I had to go through the seasons where I hit it terrible, and then you'd find a way to get your card back at Q School. So you go through all that learning phase out on tour, and the result of that is losing your card. And then I guess the determination and the little guy inside me didn't want to stop playing professional golf, so you find a way to get through Q School and go again the next season. So no, I don't really know how to put my finger on it, apart from that I just used to dig as deep as I possibly could on those Q School weeks to make sure I had a job the following year.
There's always been standout golfers in every generation, going back as, young Tom Morris, if you like, you want to go back that far. And we've seen the Spieths and the Woodses and whatnot. It feels like your journey is more old school. This was the golf career that most professional golfers had. You had your standouts, obviously, but most professional golfers had. We feel like we're in an era that's different now. We've got kids stepping out of college winning in their first year. Morikawa was already a major champion. Wolf has won on tour. Hoyland has won on tour. You would see young guys in Europe. Bob McIntyre, he's not as young as those guys, but young guys. Has the game changed in that way? Do you think, have you seen that change? I mean, we all age and
see the information. I think guys are presented with a lot more good information. If they get their head around a method, not just swing, everything. If they get their head around thinking correctly, pumping out the right numbers on TrackMan, knowing how to pump out a golf score, knowing that they're fit and fast and everything else, they've got more pieces of this pie to be successful a lot sooner, because all the stuff is measurable. You know, the only bit that's probably not measurable is what's between the ears, you know, like, but there's a lot more guys out there giving that information out, or you can get access to it, whether it's the best performance coaches or psychologists or whatever it is, you know, so you can probably get 80% of the piece of the pie pretty good early on. You know, you don't have to go out there and watch these old guys hit it and play with them and listen to what they're talking about and how they're attacking golf courses and really listening to their caddies and all that kind of stuff. You know, you don't need so much of that anymore because guys come out with this nice little equation of how to get the ball around that golf course, and they are locked onto it, you know. There's heaps of guys coming through that are good at it straight out of the box, but I think you can still go back and see signs of guys that were good straight away, you know, like your Graham McDowell's one straight away, Rory come out and went bang, Adam Scott, Trevor Immelman, these guys come out and they were, and Sergio was another one, you know, and Tiger obviously, but these are all guys that come out and went bang, and I think you'll find that going back in history, we did have a lot of guys that come straight out of college in the US and were successful pretty quickly, but you know, I guess we as older, well, myself as an older person too, you know, you watch these guys come out now and you are watching them intently because there is stuff to learn from them all, you know, where maybe in the years gone past, it takes you a while to not respect, because I have respect for all players out there, the way they go about their game, but it takes a while to be able to read a player and see what they've got good to bring to the game as far as the way that they approach the game. And now, you know, your eyes open all the time because you can never stop learning, and it's happening. Your learning's happening faster than ever out there.
What part does you mentioned yourself? You had sort of early success in as much as you got your card first time out, and you kept it that first year. Had a good little patch there. What role does confidence play in there, and how does that fit into that? Because you go from big fish, little pond as an amateur to huge pond, tiny fish. Or in your case, I don't think you're saying you weren't even a big fish in the little pond here in Australia, and you have this early success. Is that always a good thing?
That was a great thing for me. I got out on tour. No, it's I was out on tour when I was 23 when a lot of guys weren't getting out there early and people struggled for 10 years to get out there. So, no, it was a great thing. I would never change it for anything. But you're doing your learning out on tour. You're trying to improve your golf swing on the driving ranges on Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and all these kind of things. But learning out there is great still, you know. It hurts a lot more when you make mistakes out there, but no, I wouldn't change it.
It's better than working, Wade.
I am working.
Yes, I know. I was having a bit of an ick. I really feel like we're getting some terrific insights here into what life is like on the road for a professional golfer, and I can assure you there is plenty more to come after this short break. But first, some admin, starting with a reminder that if you're new here and you're liking what you hear, there's also a whole back catalogue of episodes from the last year and a bit that you can delve into. Now, there's two ways to do that. The first is to subscribe, and that's got two advantages. Not only do you get access to the whole archive, but you also never miss a future episode as they download automatically whenever they're released. It's free, which is the most important thing. The most popular ways to do it are via Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone or iPad user, any of the other types of phones or tablets. Spotify or Google Podcasts are probably your best bet. If you're having any trouble, feel free to send me an email, rod@talkinggolf.com, just one G in Talking Golf. I'll personally guide you through the process if that's what you require. Now, if all that's still a bit too technical for you, head to the Golf Australia website, golfaustralia.com.au, and click the podcast tab at the top of the page. You'll find all the episodes there, and you can listen to them at your leisure. Either way, make sure to tell a friend or a fellow golfer if you think that this is the sort of content that they might enjoy. The more the merrier is our motto here at The Thing About Golf, and all are welcome. And finally, if you've got feedback, don't hesitate to get in touch. You can find me on Twitter at @rod_Morrie or by email at the above address, rod@talkinggolf.com, or you can contact the magazine. Email is golf@golfaustralia.com.au or on all the usual social channels, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Now, let's get back to Wade Ormsby. Because it is work, isn't it? And people don't realise that. There's much more to it than turning up on Thursday, playing for 4 days and grabbing a huge cheque and jetting out Sunday night. There's a lot of professional golf that we don't see, and there's a lot of professional golfers that we don't sort of realise out there and just what a grind it is. You can make a lot of money playing golf, but you can spend a lot as a professional too, can't you? What role does business sense play in there? We talked about your dad being a very successful businessman. I imagine some of those lessons must have been helpful to you, because financial pressure is an added pressure you don't need when you're trying to play professional golf.
Absolutely. I grew up in my family and I didn't know any different, but as I'm getting older, I can't thank mum and dad enough for all the little lessons that I'd learnt from a young age, sitting at home with dad doing the invoices on the ottoman in front of me, learning about money coming in, money coming out, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm still learning off dad, and all these things are still part of my everyday thinking of. At the end of the day, we're playing golf, trying to win trophies, but at the same time, it is your livelihood and it is a business. And just because we're playing for big purses every week doesn't take the business aspect out of getting on an aeroplane, spending $5 or $8 grand a week to trying to make money and to try to make sure that it's doable to keep on going around the world and doing what we're doing, because expenses are getting higher and your team's getting bigger and everyone's getting more of a cut of what you're doing. So, yeah, you need that bigger pot in the middle to keep drawing on, to keep on trying to achieve what you want to achieve. But, yeah, I'm forever grateful to mum and dad and my family for the lessons and the way I think about the business or whatever way you're looking at, whatever business you're in has been invaluable for the way that I get my way through my life, I guess.
We spoke to Scott Hend on this very show just a couple of months ago, who I know you've been in his wallet more than once in practice rounds, and he's no doubt been in yours, and you both understand the value of a dollar. And he sort of said that that's one thing he does feel that a lot of the young players, particularly in the States who come out of college golf, don't understand. It's not their fault, but they've not ever been responsible necessarily for their own money, and money has never been any sort of issue. There's just always been plenty. So he said he'll say to a bloke, where are you staying this week? And they'll say, what's that costing? And they look at him. I don't know. it's all taken care of. Is that a good thing?
Yeah. No. In my mind, no, but there's more than one way to approach it. Like I said, like any business, you want to keep your expenses down, but you want to keep your comfort levels to a level where you can perform. And yeah, it's not all about making money out there for us, but it is a big part of the equation too. You know, you need to be viable and you need some reward for the stuff you're doing. So,
what's a year on tour cost for, just roughly, not to pry, but
I've always said it's between $5 and $6 grand a week on tour at a minimum. So by the time you roll in a caddy, your airfare's over a stint. You know, sometimes you've got long haul at the start and end of that, you know, and you've got probably 6 long hauls a year. So, yeah, so if you're probably around this 6 or 7 grand a week, so it's $6 grand by 30 events a year. It's probably 180 to 200 grand a year. And that's not doing it that flash. That's just what it costs, you know, and you've got a lot of little expenses on top of that. So I reckon a couple $100 grand would probably see most guys through at a level where, I'm not saying the big boys because they chew through that really quickly, but I think you can play at that level. But it's different. That's the European tour, and you know, I remember when I used to do it for less than $800 a week. You know, playing other tours. So it's all relative to where you're travelling and whatever else. But I reckon that 5,000 to 7,000 Aussie a week's about the mark.
There's a balance in there somewhere too, isn't it? Because if you want to play your best, you can't keep doing it at less than $800 a week. The body at 40 can't do an $800 a week year-round tour and play good golf. You need to have some level of sort of comfort just for your own health, don't you? As much as anything. So
yeah,
it's not a choice.
It's having a good caddy on the bag. You know, they are. I wouldn't say they're not cheap, but you know, that's a huge expense for us. You know, the air travel, the hotels, they're almost unnegotiables in your expenses, you know, and whether you're traveling the back of the bus or the front of the bus, it's over a year. If you want to average it all out, it's not a huge discrepancy, but for what you can potentially make out the other side. So yeah, but you still got to make those decisions. Some guys are comfortable, other guys are not. Like different points of my career, things weren't that important, and you're just happy to sit wherever on the lane or stay wherever at the venue. Just so happy to be in the golf tournament. But yeah, your comfort levels change and you get accustomed to other things. But all of a sudden, you can flip back the other way, and if you're not making the money, you're more than happy to go down a couple of rows. Still keep doing what you have to do.
Yeah, it's easier to do that if you've done it before too, I guess, is probably a part of that lesson. I, like you, think that those who don't have any idea, have never experienced it, there's a potential there for problems later in life if things stop going so well. Much harder to go back and do that if you've never done it before at a later age. Like any business, I suppose, Wade, you'd be probably reluctant to open the front door if you thought about all that before you opened the door. I remember my dad had a tyre shop and I worked there for some years, and I just did the rough calculation one day, just on the back of an eye, of what it cost to open the front door each day. And it was terrifying. You never would have started if you'd known what you were in the hole for before you could turn $1. It's you got to have a certain mindset. It can't be about the money, can it? Particularly in golf, because it will affect your performance, and not in a good way if that's what you're worried about.
Yeah, it's that old saying, isn't it? Kind of do something you love and you'll never work another day in your life type thing. And that's so important for so many aspects of life for people. And yeah, I still love competing, and you need to make sure, like it's not hard for me to go to the airport and go on an aeroplane. I always still want to go and compete, and whether that tournament's in Scotland the following week and I got to do 24 hours to get there, you still, there's that little guy inside you that's still bubbling away and wants to succeed. So it's not like it's, I can't believe I'm leaving home again. It's never like that for me, and maybe it's going to come for me in the next 10 years, but it's not like that at the moment. I love what I do, and there are downtimes when you miss a few cuts in a row on the other end of the world, and you're sitting there talking to your friends on a Friday or Saturday, and they're having a hoot back home, working their 9 to 5 out at a winery or whatever, and you're like, what am I doing? But it's not always like that. There's other times when you walk through an airport on a Sunday night and you've had a great week, and you're like, this is the greatest job in the world. So you just got to keep all your stuff in check and working the numbers, and it's a numbers game. You got to keep on presenting yourself as good as you can each week, and it evens itself out. And but it's like any business. It costs a lot to keep the doors open, and you kind of got to back yourself that, what, I've been doing it for 20 odd years, and every year we find a way to kind of come out on top. So things are in your favour. So you got to keep on going.
The day you don't want to go to the airport, or you're going to the airport to go to Scotland and you're hating it, is the day you probably know it's time to think about giving it away, because you just can't do it if you don't have that drive. Damn.
And I have so much respect for the guys that do walk, because there always is this carrot at the end, and the game can kind of break you at the end. And there's been a handful of guys that have walked in the last few years, and you still see those guys when we go back to those venues or wherever the countries are from, and you see them, you're like, that's really cool that he has been able to walk, and I have a lot of respect. Like Anthony Wall was one of them. Robert Jan Dirksen's another one, was a great Dutch player, and he just kind of sprung it all on us at about 40, 41 that he's done. I'm like, and we see him every year at the Dutch Open. It's like, I'm really happy for him, and it's kind of, I think a lot of us would kind of like to walk at our prime or not far past our prime, but it's so difficult because there's always that carrot in this game. We're all competitive, hungry people that compete in professional sport, and it's hard to turn the tap off. But I think it'd be nice to walk at a point where you're not broken, it's not the right way to put it, but before you go down the other side further than what you want to.
Well, how do you know, Wade, when Palmer walked off that last green after he won his last major, he didn't believe it would be his last, and neither did anybody watching. In 2008 when Woods won the US Open, everybody believed that he would just come back in 2009 and win another 4, and of course it took 11 years. So you can't know, can you? That's part of the difficulty of that is.
I read something this morning from Darren Clark. He won Champions Tour in a playoff the night before last, and that's his first win since the 2011 Open. You're like, Darren Clark, I always thought he was one of the most talented players ever growing up through the 90s and 2000s. And here's a guy that's been for 9 years without winning anywhere. And so it is difficult. Like, winning's difficult anywhere in any individual game. But, you don't know. But I guess Darren still loves his mates around him, his camaraderie, all that kind of stuff, and maybe has a hoot out there. So good luck to him. Keep on playing, whether you get results or not. If you're enjoying your life, we'll go for it. You know, if he's good enough to still have eligibility on all those tours for whatever he's done or whatever he's still doing, mate, just go for it. That's life.
Yeah.
Do it.
Saw him on Twitter having a long drive competition with VJ Singh a couple of weeks ago on the tournaments. Like a couple of 10-year-old kids they were. It was beautiful to see. Yeah. Indeed. Winning, you mentioned it. It's tough to do. You've done it 3 times, twice on the European Tour, once on the Asian Tour, 2 Hong Kong Opens, and I can't remember what you won on the Asian Tour. I want to go to the Asian Tour victory first, because if I'm not mistaken, it was either the week before or the week after Adam Scott won the Masters.
I think, it was, Panasonic India Open, it was. I think it was a week before, I believe, yeah.
And did you not, because you're very good mates with Adam, we'll ask how that sort of came about and what that means for a professional golfer. I think you sent him a text, did you not? Now it's your turn. Was that right?
Yeah, I remember something like that, or one way or other. Yeah, I do remember something about that. But, that was the days when I had lost my European Tour card. I had very minimal status in Europe, and my manager at the time, well, it wasn't really his decision, but it was the only card we had really left to play, was to go out and play on the Asian Tour. So I went and I went to Asian Tour school and finished about 13th and got my Asian Tour status. And then I was lucky enough to still be playing 4-round golf tournaments and put together a schedule and played a year out there, kept my card, and then I won in India. And it kind of goes back to a little bit what I said before. You know, I got on tour really young, or for where I thought my game was. So I had to do a lot of my learning on tour. I had to learn how to win. I had to learn how to make cuts. I had to do all that learning on tour. So for some guys that come out and that won more in more junior tours, if you can say it like that, you've got that winning mentality already installed in you. But I had to do it all out on tour, and so it did take me a long time to win, and India was my first, and that definitely, it definitely gives you confidence and gives you the belief that you can do it and get the job done under that kind of pressure and all that kind of stuff. But India was big for me because it got me into a lot of big events in Asia, and that paved a little stepping stone for me to get back to Europe, which I did the end of that year, and I was back in Europe in 2014. So that little sidestep to Asia was good, and I still hold an Asian Tour card, and it's an important part of my schedule, the Asian Tour. I like it out there, and it's a nice balance to the schedule that I play.
Yeah, it's an important part of the European Tour too, isn't it? The Asian swing that they have down through there.
Yeah.
And, sort of helps to grow the game internationally. Is there a standout memory from that week in India? It was your first professional win after, as you said, a number of years being at it. And I'm sure there were times in there where you wondered whether it would happen. I think every professional golfer must go through that until they get that first win. Was there a standout memory? And do you remember what that feeling was when you finally, because it's not easy to win anywhere. Sergio Garcia said this a couple of years ago. It's no easier to win on the Asian Tour than it is to win on the PGA Tour. Winning is hard.
Yep. 20-footer on 17, that stands out as a pretty good memory.
Uh-huh.
I remember having a right to left of there and I made that. So, no, I'm trying to think exactly. If anyone's played Delhi Golf Club, it's one of the tightest, most penal golf courses on the planet.
Claustrophobic, I think, is the word, isn't it?
Yeah, right? Exactly. And 18 is probably one of the tightest, most penal holes in the golf course. And it's all tee shot. You know, you can hit anything from I think David Gleason hit 5-iron off the 18th tee, a par 5 when he won there. And I hit a 2-iron rescue from memory, and then I hit a 5-iron, then I hit a sandwich or something. And because if you missed it, it was a reload or penalty, and there's nowhere to drop it, etc. So anyway, I've birdied 17 to go one ahead, and pretty much had to make par up the last. So I just poked it down the fairway with a pretty poor strike off the tee, but it was straight. And then a 5-iron and a sandwich, and then that was good enough to get the job done. But yeah, that was huge for me at the time, and I guess winning's winning, and to stand there and won your first event's a big thing in anyone's professional career.
Yeah, get your hands on the trophy, not just looking at it, actually holding it and knowing that your name's going on there. Wonderful stuff. Am I mistaken, or are there cobras in those bushes either side of the fairways there at Delhi?
I hit it pretty straight, so I don't get in those bushes. But mate, I would believe it. There's plenty of peacocks. There's all kinds of stuff around the golf course. It's like a wildlife sanctuary. That golf course is a beautiful place, and it's one that I always remember.
Fantastic. Now, of course, we mentioned there, so you sent off a text to Adam Scott and said, now it's your turn, and of course he repaid the favour by winning the Masters on behalf of all of us Australians who'd suffered for so long the following week. How did you come to it? We know from the epic playoff that you dropped out of early, unfortunately, that year with Chalmers and Adam Scott. They went for about 3 days. I think you went 2 or 3 holes. Should have been yours. We'll come to that later. But we know that you stayed at his house that week. You got this relationship with him. What's that like? Because a guy like Adam Scott lives on a different level, doesn't he? I remember at the Masters in 2015 down at Huntingdale, obviously he was the biggest name in the field and all the crowds are drawn to him. But even amongst the other players, there's a certain something, isn't there? There's a natural respect there, obviously, and he was different to everyone else in the field. How long have you known him for? How does that relationship work? I get the sense that away from the golf course, Adam Scott's just a good bloke.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the first thing before I forget saying that, Scotty is everything you see. He is down to earth. He's a balanced guy. He's a fantastic guy, and and that's echoed all around the world on every tour. You won't hear a bad thing about Adam Scott. He's like the Roger Federer of golf, and maybe his career stacks up very well to Roger, but if you know what I mean, he's just that guy that just is well liked. He's in every locker room. Everyone likes him, and that's just the way it is. So Scotty is a jet from every angle. But how did I get to know Adam? Well, I think it goes back to our dads, Phil, Scott, Adam's father, and my dad, Peter, they similar ages, and Adam's from South Australia, which a lot of people wouldn't probably know, but Phil was at Blackwood Golf Club, Dad was down at Riverside, I think in the similar eras, and they were just club pros, so well before, I guess, the children come along, so they knew each other, and so there's that part in the start. So once I got to probably 13, 14, around that era, when we're starting to spring up on junior golf kind of tournaments, that's when I really started bumping into Adam a lot, and he was obviously a standout back then, and I was kind of good for my age here in South Australia. So then you just gravitate towards each other, and we had that common thing with Dad and golf professionals in going on. So we used to travel together and stay together and try to beat each other's brains out too on the golf course. But he got my number more than I got his. So, but no, I've always liked the way Adam's gone about. I think he's mirrored a lot of his stuff on the way Norman's gone about his career, and Norman was my idol growing up, like anyone in Australia through that era, through that 80s and 90s, Norman was the man's. And so I like the way Adam went about what he did, and we always kind of kept in contact all the way through to early to mid 2000s. And then Adam he left Europe pretty quickly, obviously, because he kind of jetted off to America because he was achieving such great things in the game. So we haven't had the contact as far as spending a lot of time with each other over our careers that much, just because we're playing such different schedules. But it's one of those friendships you form in your teams that it's kind of irreplaceable, but you don't really, it's one of those ones where you don't really have to be on the phone all the time. When you catch up and you have a laugh about the good old days, and that's just the way it's been with Scotty.
How important are those relationships, those friendships, for any professional golfer? But then I suppose you get to a level where Adam Scott is, where there's an awful lot of people want something from you. Not always necessarily easy to tell who has pure motivations and who doesn't. And I would imagine that for him, you'd be a fairly important friend in that way. And some others, no doubt. I'm not suggesting you're his only friend, but that becomes more important, doesn't it, the more success you have?
Adam's got an amazing support around him, which doesn't involve me, I'm sure, you know. So Scotty's got a lot of good friends around him, I know, that are not necessarily from golf. So he's got his own support network, which I'm sure he draws on like any of us do during good times and bad times. And yeah, he's a balanced guy, and you know, he's, without naming who all those guys are, I know that he's got that core group around him, and they haven't changed. They haven't changed for 20 years, and a lot of people wouldn't know them. They might have seen them here and there, but I think that's what keeps someone like Adam Scott, because he's got everything in check. He just does it in a balanced, professional way, you know, and that's, don't know how any other way to put it than that.
He'll be a great President's Cup captain one day, won't he?
He'll be an amazing President's Cup captain. Everyone will want to play for him. Unfortunately, I'll probably be too old.
He might pick you as a vice captain. You might get to go for the ride.
I'll drive his golf buggy around for him.
Yeah, that's right. He does appear to be the one who's heavily invested in the President's Cup. I think he's of the right generation where he was kind of 98 was competitive. Around 2000, he turned professional. That seems to have been the issue for the international team. It hasn't. It just needs time, that President's Cup, doesn't it? And I think he'll play a really important role as a captain one day for that reason. Absolutely. I hope I haven't missed anyone out, but I think Ernie was an amazing captain. Mm-hmm. Scotty, I know, really looks up to Ernie in a way and respects the way he goes about a lot of his stuff. So there's just a natural progression there. That will be the next one that's going to be amazing. Who's going to be amazing President's Cup captain like Tomo was, Peter Thompson. And so, there was. We've definitely got that to look forward to. Yep, indeed. Enough about others. Back to you. 2 Hong Kong Open wins, as I said. The second one earlier this year. So you win nothing for all those years. Then in the space of 7 years, you go bang, bang, bang and win 3. What's the difference between Wade Ormsby 2020 when he wins the Hong Kong Open, Wade Ormsby 2017 when he wins it the first time, and Wade Ormsby 2013 when he has the first win?
Definitely the last one was the best I'd played. There's no question about that. 17, I played a lot of good golf in 17 and got myself there and fell away. And I had a strong season. 17. It's just I'd been home. I'd done a lot of gardening, and I remember getting on the plane. It was a funny one, you know. I hadn't probably done the work. I always prepare myself to the nth degree to go away and compete, and I probably hadn't done as much as I thought I could have done, just because I was at the end of a season. I'd spent some time home after a European season. Then I remember getting on the range that week and speaking to Richard, my caddy, who's from the UK, and I said, Rich, I probably haven't done enough last week. Let's put our heads down and bums up next 2 days and try and fast track this preparation to get ready. And 5 days later, I'm standing there with a trophy in my hand. So I guess that got my expectations in check, and that's the way that one turned out. But that first win in Europe, it's one of those things that everyone always asks you: have you played with Tiger Woods and have you won on tour? So that was one of those ones that I was able to say yes to both those questions. So
when did you play with Tiger? What was that like? We'll come to the second win in a minute and a bit of other stuff. But
that's an interesting one. Tiger
Junior
WGC golf? At Firestone, last round at Firestone. The last time we'll be there in a 2-ball on Sunday. That doesn't get much better than that. So
wow.
That was amazing. Tiger was great to play with. So that was something that I will always remember.
You'll be able to tell your kids and your grandkids
exactly.
Forever. Did you ever meet Tiger, Dad? They'll say, you played a bit of golf, didn't you? Did you ever meet Tiger? And you say, well, funny you should ask, son. Pull up a chair.
Exactly.
I'll tell you all about it. The second one in 2020, feels like this is what happens to a golfer, isn't it? You've now won twice as a professional, so the expectation changes, doesn't it? Certainly from without. Much less of a surprise when Wade Ormsby wins in 2020. Does it change from within? And is that part of what learning to deal with those situations is about?
I think there's a couple of components to that 2020 win. Like I know Hong Kong Golf Club, Fanling, as it's called, is a great venue for me. It always has been. It's tight. It's kind of fiddly in a way, but everyone's got to hit the golf ball in the same spot, and it just becomes kind of shootouts from those areas. So I know the golf course is good for me, so I always go there with a level of expectation. because it's one of those weeks where I should perform better than other venues. So that's one thing that I always know I've got in my pocket when I go to Hong Kong golf clubs. Secondly, it's somewhere I'd had success before, so you always get good feelings when you walk in Hong Kong golf club, your name's on the board. That's another part of it, but that can quickly throw your expectations in the wrong kind of way. But the big thing about 2020 win was what happened in December at the Australian PGA. I can flat out admit I ditched that golf tournament, and that one, losing that, hurt me more than any other Sunday afternoon in my career. It's not who I was competing against, it's not about Adam Scott and all that. It was about the way that I didn't get the job done internally, and that irritated me massively. So I just made so many mistakes internally. So I had a crappy Christmas. Well, I had a good Christmas with the family, but that period over Christmas for 2 or 3 weeks, because it was a real quick turnaround, I took a few days off. It was the worst drive I had to an airport on a Sunday afternoon by myself because the family went home earlier. And I'm not sure if many people know this, but I sat on the couch about 3 days before going to Hong Kong, and my wife says to me, if you don't do something about it as far as getting a psychologist to help you out, I'm going to make sure I sort it out type thing. So I sat there reluctantly on Google one night and started Googling a few different options of who I think could help me, and put a few feelers out that night at about 11 o'clock on the couch, and started working with Noel Blundell the next day, I think, and did about 3 quick crash courses before I went up there. And all of a sudden he put the wheels in motion to get my head in order in those key moments. And I 100% locked into that week. And I had one thing in my mind, was to win that golf tournament, because I knew I was playing well and I needed that last piece of the pie at that point in order to win. And I was able to implement what Noel was giving me, and I played great and won that golf tournament. So that is the one I'm most proud of for sure, because irrespective of who was chasing me down, I had a couple of good guys chase me down, but I felt like I had control of what I was doing out there, which is a cool feeling to have as a professional athlete.
Try to help people understand a little bit. And I'm fascinated to hear you talk about that disappointment. Professional golf is a life full of not winning. The very, 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 very best don't approach double figures percentage-wise of tournaments played versus tournaments won. So you spend most of your time not winning. That's just a given. So why does the disappointment from that event in 2019, why does that bite so hard? You've had some close calls, and I'm sure they all hurt. The Vic Open, I think, last year is one that you don't probably look back on fondly. That one that we mentioned in 2014, I think it was it 2014 with Chalmers and Scott?
Plenty of them.
You probably should have won that one. But
the heap of guys, it's easy to look back on them, but you just got to look forwards, and think, hang on, I made those mistakes coming down the stretch, and that's the ones you focus on. You don't focus on the Thursday where you missed that 3-footer or that left the shot in the bunker on Friday afternoon or whatever. You always focus on that last 12 holes of a golf tournament or whatever, what you could have done different to win by 2 instead of lose by 1 or whatever. But yeah, there are always going to be disappointments. Doesn't matter what sport you're in. It's competition, isn't it? So it's what drives you to keep coming back and to keep learning from that. But yeah, I don't sit there and you try and take the positives of those weeks where you get close, because you are close for a reason, because you're playing bloody good golf. And that's the way it is. You look at Nicklaus, it's been always well documented how many times he finished second, not all the majors he just won. So, yeah, it's just I just remember the Australian PGA last year. I remember driving the airport, I turned my phone around, I was sitting in the cup holder or wherever it sits, and it's just like, I can't even look at it. I don't even want to look at the messages pinging through, because it just made me angry. I was annoyed with myself.
Is that a turning point of some sort? Will you look back in 10 years and say that week, that tournament, that Sunday afternoon was some sort of a turning point? Something big happened there for you, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think all of us that kind of get our ducks in a row later in our career wish we were younger and we could do it earlier. But it gets back to where I said really early, you want to be able to, I'm so honest with the way I put everything on the table, and I critique myself. I'm always trying to put everything out there, how we can get better, and I'm never trying to mask anything in my game. It is what it is. Put on the table, which way can we go? And I'm always doing that. My caddy, he's been great with that. We have more coffees talking about which fork to take next than people would believe. It's not like, we just run this system for 3 years and we go with it and try to win golf tournaments. We're always massaging the process, and it's like any business, you've got to do that. You've got to keep evolving. You've got to keep on making little changes, not kind of fiddling with it. You're making logical decision based on performance to try and get better. But I could think the fact that I made quite a big play by seeing Noel and implementing some mental tools, is probably the best way to put it, and that I got a instant kind of feedback and win, not feedback. I got instant result from what I put in. It doesn't always happen like that, and so I think it's opened up a whole new way to deal with situations, I guess, for me, and coping mechanisms out there, or performing mechanisms. So it's good, it's exciting, but I'm still under no illusion. It's not the golden answer.
No, there isn't one, is there?
20 golden answers in golf.
Yeah, that's exactly. And this week's answer is not the same as next week's answer. Same answer will get you a different result. Yeah. That's the thing will drive you. In some ways, Wade, is the picking up the phone and calling Noel Blundell more important than anything Noel Blundell has done with you since? Does that make sense, that question? That acceptance of, right, a lot of guys are skeptical about sports psychology. You would know that. Other guys on tour. Lots of them would be skeptical about seeing somebody. Is that maybe the biggest breakthrough?
I think a lot more people have got people in their corner than what they would let on, if that makes sense too. Like you can always visually see guys out there walking around with guys, helping them out. There's a lot of guys on telephones at night. There's a lot of people in people's corner at home before they travel. So you don't always get a true cross-section of who's working with who. It's a little bit more of the silent guy in the corner is the psychologist or the mentor or the whoever else. It's just not as visual as a golf coach. I could tell you who's working with everyone from a golf coach point of view out there, but the mental side, can be done over a telephone. It can be done on weeks off, and it's building blocks from a long time ago. So it's just that it's not as easily measurable, I should say. So I think a lot of guys do work with them, have had some kind of education from sports psychologists along the way, through our national golf bodies and all that. There's a lot more emphasis put on that, but you'd be pretty silly to say that the mental part and what you can get from these guys isn't that important, because it is. It's that simple, it is.
So what sorts of things, Wade?
I don't need to go into completely, but it's things like expectations, things like routines, things like making yourself calm down or keeping yourself in an operating window where you can operate your best, whether it's getting too not anxious or too up and about or getting too low. That's probably the best way to summarise, where you want to keep yourself at your optimum levels to perform your best. That's what you're trying to do, and one shot at a time. All those old cliches are more important than what people think they are, and that's what gets the job done out there. Well, that's what I understand anyway.
Awareness.
Tell me otherwise.
I imagine awareness as much as anything else, Wade. Being aware of what you're feeling and how you're just being aware of that, so that you can be in control of it rather than letting it be in control of you. Some simple sort of ideas there, aren't there?
Yeah, like I said, I've always been massively honest. If I feel like stuff's got in my head and screwed up the outcome of a shot, I'll put on the tape. I'm not going to say, oh, that was a bad golf swing. Well, that golf swing could have been cooked way before the way I was thinking about that shot. And I've always been so honest with that. I'll come back to the bag after hitting a shot water left and hitting it way right, and people go, how can you hit it there? And I'll go back to the bag and say to my caddy, that was never going in the water. I've just completely screwed my head before I hit the shot, and I've always been like that. I've always put on the table. I'm not going to shy away from trying to blame things that it wasn't. Otherwise, you can go down the wrong fork in the road trying to fix stuff if you're not honest with yourself.
Once you get to your level, and you've been playing the game as long as you have, the physical range of skills on any given day is probably not a huge amount of variance. Your very worst physical golf is still probably going to be good enough most weeks to certainly see you get near the cut, make the cut for the most part. Yeah, it's the mental side that can be really different, can't it? And particularly those weeks when the golf swing is not where you want it or you're not hitting it the way you want.
Yeah, well, I think they're the two easy areas to put. It kind of gets back to the little analogy I gave before. You get your ball striking, you got your short game and your putting, you got your mental part of it, and they all play a kind of equal role in your different areas of the game each week. So, yeah, the margins are getting tighter and tighter until, you can't have all three of them are mediocre and make cuts. You need to have something going okay to get going. You need to probably have 2 to 2.5 of those things going nicely to be in the top 10, and you probably need to have 2.7 of those three things going well to contend on the back nine on Sunday. So it's just the way it is. Before, there's guys that were just hitting the ball well and they could be there every weekend, but yeah, you're forever working at all three of those areas to try to make sure that you can go out there and deliver the goods.
Indeed. Which brings us neatly, Wade, to what's the future hold for Wade Ormsby? Where are you now with your career, your golf? When you look forward, what do you see? I think you're probably approaching 40.
Yeah, I've turned 40 early this year, so okay. I'm actually day 8 in quarantine. That's where my future is right now.
Day 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14 to go and you'll be golden. Yeah.
Oh, God, it's brutal. It's brutal. So, no, this whole pandemic's been crazy for everyone, It's put a lot of things in perspective. You start putting a different spin on your life and thinking, well, the world's we don't want it to be different, because I don't like people saying it's a new norm, because hopefully we can come out the other side of this as quick as what we went into it. But I think it's going to be a little bit longer road on the way out than what it was on the way in with this pandemic. All we can do is, I don't know, I guess thank what a lucky country we live in here in Australia, and possibly the envy of the world at the moment, being an island, but how it really affects myself and a lot of other people playing international professional sports, it's bloody tough, and I want people to take that in the right way. I'm not tough from, forget about the financial part of it. It's that the way I used to operate, the way I operated last year was I was doing anywhere between 2 and 4 week stints back and forwards to Europe. And I was lucky enough that Emirates and Qatar fly out of Adelaide every Sunday night, and I can bomb it into anywhere in Europe overnight and Sunday night and be there at lunchtime on Monday. And that gave me a way to operate on the European tour living in Adelaide, which is my dream. So to feel like some of that's being taken away from me, it's hard, because I have a family, I have a young daughter that's just only 6 months old, and so it's not going to make that any easier in the next 12 months, at least the next 6 months, until different measures come in place. So that stuff annoys me, but it is what it is. There's a lot of people in worse situations. So I'm forever trying to juggle my schedule and form a schedule that's going to maximise my ability to work my way up the tours and world rankings and everything else. So you just got a whole different set of, not issues, but just things that are making you change the way you go about your business, because I don't want to be quarantining, and that's the biggest issue for all of us at the moment. I speak to all the Aussies the last few days that are in quarantine. I think there's Min Woo in Perth, there's Jake McLeod. So Min Woo and Jake McLeod are in Brisbane, because the only place Min could get back to, and you've got Zach Murray up there, Lucas Herbert's just done it, Stephen Leaney's coming in next Monday. So we're all like, no one's immune to it. We're all doing this quarantining, and it's hard because it's affecting our schedules. We've all had to kiss goodbye the South African component and that race, the lucrative race to Dubai tournament at the end. We can't play that, otherwise you're missing Christmas and whatever else like that. So it's making it challenging. But in answer to your question, I should get back to is what does 2021 hold for me? Well, yeah, I'll form the best schedule I possibly can and try to work my way up to the top of the tour. I've never finished top 30 or 40 on the European Tour by year end, and that's the kind of goals I want. I want to play more majors, more WGCs, and I want to massage them into a already strong European schedule. So that's what I want to do. And the body's holding up well. I'm probably not as fast and as powerful as some guys, but there's always work to be done there. So hopefully I can keep this old frame fast enough to keep at those young fellas' feet.
They get younger, they get faster, they get bigger, they get stronger every year, Wade. The older you get, the younger they look too, I find. Guys that, when guys were 20 when I was 30, they didn't look that young. Now I look at guys that are 20, they look really young. Like they shouldn't be allowed to drive. So that's what you've got to look forward to, mate, for the next sort of decade or so. This forced introspection of quarantine and this whole pandemic, as you say, and you already get lots of time to sit around by yourself as a professional golfer internationally. Has there been are there upsides to that, or are there potential downsides to that? Is a golfer left sitting alone with his own mind for 14 days a healthy thing? Could go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I've got a nice view here. I'm looking outside here at Adelaide, and it's perfect blue sky day, and these are the days that hurt. You just want to be outside. But, yeah, it's tough on the head. There's no question. Golf, yeah, like you said, you spend a lot of time away and a lot of time by yourself, but it comes back to having good family, good support network. I've got an amazing family. We've got FaceTime. I probably make a lot of my friends unproductive because I'm always on the phone ringing people and WhatsApp groups and Viber groups. I'm like everyone else. I love group chat because it keeps me in touch with everyone, and you wake up in the morning and in Europe or Australia and you get a lot of messages from the other side of the world, so that keeps me entertained. And yeah, my wife's amazing. She gets what I do and supports me 100%, and my parents equally. So, and your friends on tour, I've got a couple of good mates out there, which as you get older, you gravitate to the same couple of guys, and you kind of, and that's what keeps you going, I guess. So, it's pretty similar to most people's life. You have your support network and your mates that you have a laugh with and keep everything pretty normal.
So the last thing I was going to ask you about was that sort of fraternity on tour. Who do you sort of run with and why? You got access to people from all over the world. It's a wonderful education in life, isn't it, to play a tour like the European Tour where people come from all over the world to be a part of it. You certainly got no monoculture there, have you? You learn stuff about yourself and how lucky we are here in Australia, as you said, and lots of other stuff, don't you? Who do you hang with on tour?
Yeah, it's James Morrison is an English bloke. He similar age to me, a couple of years younger actually. Probably won't like me saying that, but he married his wife Jess. She's from Melbourne. Nicholas Coulsarts, his wife's from Sydney. So you find this common ground there, and a lot of it is kind of, I guess, determined by what sport, or like what group of sports your countries follow, like the South Africans and the English and all that, and the Irish. We all have kind of common sports and the same type of humour, so it's easy to kind of click with those guys. Scott Jamison's another good friend from Scotland. He's a great guy. But the wonderful thing about golf is you go out in the golf course and you kind of walk around with guys for 4 or 5 hours at a time, and you kind of get to know them all pretty quick. And when you can get guys that are just kind of fresh on tour, like Maverick Ancliffe. I played a practice round with a young Australian. He's a great guy. Jason Scrivener, spent a lot of time with. So all these guys, age isn't always a thing for friendship out there, because you just have the same things in common, or you like following Formula One or motorsports or whatever else for me. And so, that would be the main kind of group that I kind of knock around with out there. But it's good. It's good to. It's just been difficult during this pandemic because we're only able to eat with one other person on tour inside the bubble, and that's being your caddy, because he's your main contact. So I think that aspect's kind of hurt a lot of guys out there, just because you're just operating in this tiny bubble within inside a bubble. So we'll be very happy when it can go back to normal.
Who was the player who just he just said, that's it, he had to pull the pin after, I think he played
Beef Johnson, Andrew Johnson.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
Just couldn't do it mentally. And you kind of get it. If you really think about it, doesn't matter what all the trappings are, you're trapped. And it's that's a horrible feeling. My cousin's a bit of she's in Melbourne, and she's not one for going out much anyway. And I was talking to her, I said, well, this would suit you right down to the ground, this lockdown. She said, well, the funny thing, when you don't sort of want to go out, it's okay. But when you're told you can't, it's a whole different ball game. That changed.
There's a lot of people that have been in isolation way before this started. But, it's difficult, it's just different for all of us. And you're right, when you get told you can't do something at like well into your 30s or 40s, it's not a good feeling. No. It feels like you're back at school.
Exactly. Whether you wanted to do it or not, now that you've been told you can't do it, you absolutely want to do it because you've been told you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Wade, it's been great to catch up.
Touching on that if I can quickly. I think the European Tour has done a fantastic job in making events go. They've worked extensively with the government. And when I first rocked up over there, I was like, I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to deal with all these rules. But they've done a great job in getting these bubbles up and running. And it's to just be out there playing golf again. You realise how much you love the game. And actually the happy place was out in the golf course, because that's where we had the freedom and no masks and all that kind of stuff. So it just shows you what a wonderful game we play. And we're pretty grateful as members of the European Tour that they've been able to get us back going again. So I think it's hats off to them. And even though we've had tough times out there, but hopefully there's better times ahead.
You're 100% right, of course, Wade, and we're always quick to criticise, and certainly us in the media, we like to give the authorities a kicking, be they professional or amateur or whoever it might be, but you're absolutely right. The European Tour have done a magnificent job to get any sort of golf played in the last couple of months, and for fans as well, for fans of the game, absolutely, because there's not a whole lot else to follow, as you know. Most sports have just been completely disrupted, and
it's different out there. And as members of the tour, we've all put our 2 bobs worth in, and we've all criticised and reluctantly followed rules, and we've arced up at different things. But that's just natural, when you've got such a big change to the way that we normally approach our weeks on tour and what we can and can't do. There's just immediate backlash, and that's just normal. But if you actually boil it down to how they could have done it better, it's very difficult to see how they could have done it better. And to have 20 or 25 events that they've played since they've started up again is amazing, and it's cool to have golf back and us going again, doing what we want to do.
Absolutely.
So, no, it's good. Thanks. Thank you.
Good.
Cheers.
Yeah, a big and heartfelt thanks to Wade Ormsby there for giving us so much of his time to be a part of the show. I know that he was in lockdown there in Adelaide, but still extremely generous to subject himself to more than an hour of my frivolous questions. I thought there were some terrific insights there into the realities of travelling the world and playing golf for a living. I think most of us who play the game recreationally forget that there's something more than just passion at stake for these guys. There's a business. Money goes out and money needs to come in, and that certainly changes the realities of golf for them as opposed to us. Now, as we mentioned at the top of the show, John Huggan has officially joined the Thing About Golf rotation, and his first interview will be our next, when he catches up with legendary sports writer and his own mentor, Tom Callahan.
I kept going to the Open Championship long after I stopped the others, so I could hang around with Dan Jenkins. I was his driver.
That's next time on The Thing About Golf.